80% of the world's remaining terrestrial biodiversity is sheltered by forests. Around 1.6 billion people rely on forests for various reasons, such as shelter, livelihoods, water, food, or fuel security. Forests are the lungs of the earth. Forests were once vast places, full of life and a refuge of endemic species. But unfortunately, the reality of today is quite different. According to the United Nations Environment Programme, over a period of 5 years, between 2015 and 2020, 10 million hectares of forest were converted to other land uses every year. Forests are home to the species that we care for, and that is why zoos and aquariums around the world have decided to act. In October 2018, the World Association of Zoos and Aquariums, WAZA, signed a Memorandum of Understanding with the Forest Stewardship Council. One of the goals of that memorandum is a commitment from both organisations to protect the world's forests and its biodiversity. To support WAZA members, we have created a short guide: how to choose responsibly sourced forest products at your zoo or aquarium. This guide aims to help your organisation implement the policies and changes needed to improve how you buy paper and wood products. Changing business practice is not only beneficial for protecting biodiversity, but it can also improve employee relations, stimulate innovation, and enhance community relations. The zoo and aquarium community has a critical role to play in the conservation of wildlife and biodiversity, both in the field and within our own facilities. Fellow WAZA members, please download the WAZA Forest Guide and encourage your teams to use it to implement changes in your own organisation. The world is losing 10 million hectares of land every year to deforestation, and we want to reduce this figure. We know with your help we can make a difference. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. I'd say good morning, good afternoon, good evening. One of the joys of being in a global community is we do join across many different time zones. So I thank you all for joining us and watching that video that hopefully gave the overview of the why we want to do this. And thank you so much for Paula from the WAZA team who helped in gathering such beautiful footage from so many WAZA members that made that story so clear. I'm Elaine Benstead. I'm the Chief Executive of Zoos South Australia. I'm a member of the WAZA Conservation and Environmental Sustainability Committee. And I've got the real pleasure tonight, I'll keep saying tonight because it's night for me, today, of hosting, facilitating a fabulous discussion. I'm really looking forward to hearing from our panel members. Can I firstly, it's always really important for me in South Australia to acknowledge that we are on the traditional lands of the Kaurna people of the Greater Adelaide Plains. So I said, Nadlu Tampinti Kaurna Mayana Wama Tatniaku. And that's simply my acknowledgement that we are on lands, one of the oldest civilizations in the country in the world of 60,000 years. And of course, we've got people joining us from all over the world. And I'd love to check with Martine if you could give us a quick update just on who we've got joining us on the webinar, where they're from, how many people we've got.
Yes, we have people from Indonesia, South Africa, Germany, Czechia, and many other countries. We are now a group of 30 people connected and joining us.
Thank you. It is one of the real pleasures, and I think especially, you know, the last 18 months have been such a challenge for so many people, and everyone's faced the challenges at different times, but the connections and the community of WAZA is incredibly important, and it's one of the benefits, the key benefits, and I know the WAZA surveys always show that, is just that connection and the sharing of knowledge, and that's really what today's webinar is all about. So I'm not going to talk for too long because we've got a lot of three amazing speakers to present knowledge. But just to give a little bit of context, this is tied to the WAZA sustainability strategy, which was launched last year. Looking at Karen, hopefully she'll give me a nod. Time all blurs together at the moment. I think it was last year, which Karen Farfield really led the development of Caring for Our Planet, the sustainability strategy. And the committee really wanted to take that strategy and give additional tools and supports and connections for all of the WAZA members to make that strategy easier to be able to implement and to have more of a two-way discussion. I've been so impressed with the guides that have been developed so far, with members that have shared their knowledge and they've presented case studies, and I think that's some of the most amazing resource for people to say, you're part of a community, others have done this, others have tried and maybe something didn't work, they're willing to share that with you. And so we had our first webinar to support the sustainability strategy just recently that Dr. Judy Mann hosted. That was on the single-use plastics guide. Got this one, which is all about sustainable timber and paper. One of the strategies within the system, one of the goals within the sustainability strategy was good procurement, which is really just what do we buy and what do we use? And we all use a lot of paper and a lot of timber. And so how do we make that as sustainable as possible? We've got future plans for a palm oil one. I know there's carbon emissions and then an overall webinar, but this one is really focused on paper and timber. So I'm so pleased that we've got three fabulous presenters. Before we do that though, we're just going to ask Paula from the WAZA office to run a really quick survey. And we're just going to ask you a few short questions. Please answer totally honestly. If we ask you and you say you've never seen it, tell us that. It's really to get our assessment of, have you seen the guide? Do you know what FSC is all about? Because that will help our three presenters adapt their presentation to suit the people that we've got in the audience. So Paula's going to ask us a couple of short questions and then I'll introduce our speakers.
Okay, so we will show the results for the first question.
Okay, so it's almost 50% yes, 50% no. And that's understandable because it's actually only recently released, and we do also know that so many of us are dealing with a whole range of challenges at the moment. So, but that's great knowledge for us. Thank you.
We will now move to the second question. Okay.
Okay, and that's not surprising given the first question that about half and half had seen. For those that have seen, some have started looking at reading it, others haven't quite got to that yet. Thank you. And the last question, I think it is. This is free market research for FSC, Paula. Paula's looking happy. That's pretty good. That's great. Thank you so much for taking the time to answer those 3 short questions. It just helps our presenters know the audience that we've got. So you heard in the video that WAZA and FSC do have a formal memorandum of agreement. It was signed way back when we can remember in the Bangkok, I think it was, WAZA conference. And we understand that a lot has happened since then, but that agreement put commitments on WAZA and WAZA members, but also on FSC. And we're going to get a chance to hear a little bit more about that memorandum of understanding. So our format for today is we will hear first of all from Paula Waschilowski. I hope I got that sort of right, Paula, from FSC, who's agreed to join us, give a presentation so we can get a bit more information about FSC, who they are, what they do, and the particular relationship with WAZA. We will then have the opportunity to hear from 2 case studies. For those of you who haven't seen the guide, it does have 11, I think, in total case studies. We've picked 2 for tonight, and I'm so pleased that Karen and Alison are going to give their experience from a genuine operational point of view. How do they live and breathe this? What's worked, what hasn't worked, etc. And then we'll ask you all to hold your questions until the end. Please put questions in the chat facility, and then after all 3 speakers, we'll open it up and we'll facilitate some discussions. And so in the chat, either put a question to one of the specific presenters, or it may be a general question that we can go to all panel members or to WAZA themselves, and I'm sure my team would be happy to answer that. So you're not here to listen to me. Let's hand over first of all, and so pleased that Paula from FSC is going to be our first presenter. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. So I'm just going to be sharing my screen, and I would kindly ask you to confirm whether you see a presenter screen or full presentation. Is it the correct screen? Yes? Or do you see the presenter's version?
Yes.
We're seeing the presenter's version, Paula.
Okay, so I'm just gonna... Sorry, there's a few things here. Sorry, this worked yesterday when we tried it. It's just there's some additional things at the top that I can't see my display settings. There we go. Apologies for that. I think now you should be able to see it better.
That looks beautiful. Thank you so much. And we were joking early on that, 12 months after, 15 months after, we're all still learning this stuff. And every time you go online and you're on a different computer, it's a bit different. So we all understand that. Look forward to the presentation, Paula.
Very well. Thank you for having me. I'm Paula Waschilowski, and I am a trademark manager at Fsc International, and we are based in Bonn, Germany. And I'm here today to speak to you a bit about Fsc, what is Fsc, how we are working with WAZA, and what can you do, and how you can engage with Fsc more. And just moving on into my presentation, that doesn't seem to work. So what is Fsc? I guess most of you know Fsc as being this, a label for responsible wood and paper, and most products that come out of forest, really a certification scheme. But we are just so much more than that. We are a community of people from around the world that have come together for the joint missions on what we can do with our world's forest. As a result, we have a very unique democratic structures where we give a voice to diverse interests. We are a democratic member-based organizations where everyone has an equal voting right and say on how we are using the natural resources that come from the forest. We have a three-chamber approach, which means that we deliver solutions that secure better outcomes for businesses, environment, and forests. The way we achieve this is really through mutual respect, learning, where we create local solutions to global problems. I think my internet is a bit poor, but we are a framework for positive change. And really, our credibility, the promise behind our label, is one of our fundamental principles and values of who we are, how we work, and what we really stand for. We don't accept companies in our system that contribute to violation of human rights, illegal logging, for example. And we call this a policy of association, which means Fsc takes the right to dissociate from any companies that don't live up to our core values and principles. And this is why we're one of the most trusted certification globally with high recognition, as we've seen. We work for a world where we have solved the climate crisis, where we respect communities and people, where forests, animals are thriving, and we work for a forest for forever. So why is it really important to source responsibly? As you've seen from the video, forests really contain most of the world's terrestrial biodiversity. 1.6 billion people depend on forests and their livelihoods, and most of the accessible freshwater come from the forest. So what is actually Fsc doing to support companies and organizations to source responsibly? As some of you might know, we have a certification system, and this applies in 3 different ways. At the forest level, we have a forest management certification, which is required for forest operators and forest managers, and really sets the standards, the first standards of responsible management of natural forests and plantation. Everything that comes out of a forest and goes into supply chain must get certified and are required to all companies at every step in the supply chain to get certified to ensure that they are continuing respecting our guidelines and are indeed compliant with our certification systems. And at the end of the supply chain, we have companies that buy finished label goods that are not required to get certified, but they can take advantage of using the Fsc trademarks to promote their efforts to responsibly sourcing and promotion of the products. Fsc and WAZA have been working together, as you've heard. In 2018, we have signed an MOU, which really has 4 main goals, and we are focusing on joint communication, reflecting the benefits of the certification for nature conservation and protection of endangered species. WAZA members are encouraged to have a procurement policy in place to source Fsc certified paper and wood products, but also Fsc has committed to increase the global areas of certified forests by 50% by 2023. And you might be wondering, how can you actually engage with Fsc? So there are different ways in which you can engage with Fsc. Firstly, you can use Fsc certified materials. For example, if you're planning a new construction or renovation of your facilities, why not consider sourcing Fsc certified raw materials? If you're not doing that, you can also use Fsc certified materials in your everyday operation. You can use Fsc certified paper for your leaflets, posters, maps, or even things like toilet paper and tissues. In your gift shops, you can sell a range of Fsc certified products. This could be anything from pencils, coloring books, notebooks, wooden toys. And I think one of the most important part is actually increasing awareness, consumer awareness, communicate about your efforts and tell the world what things you have put in place to source responsibly. And one of the most important assets that Fsc has that you all know is our Fsc trademarks. Fsc has 5 registered trademarks: the Fsc logo, the full name Forest Stewardship Council, Fsc initials, and the 2 brand marks Forest for Forever. I think you might all be familiar and you might have seen it on your products that you buy, but also in promotional materials. The Fsc trademarks cannot be used by anyone, but can only be used by certificate holders and by promotional license holders, by companies that are part of the Fsc system, to ensure that the products and the communication messages they put out there are indeed genuine and verifiable. And how can you actually engage with Fsc? For example, you can get an Fsc Project Certification if you're renovating or constructing a new building and using Fsc certified materials. You can get an Fsc certification. The value of this is that you can show your commitment for environmentally friendly practices through sustainable sourcing, but also you can use the Fsc trademark to promote your project, but also your procurement policies. We have a lot of information on our website on how you can get project certification, but in a nutshell, these certifications are carried out by certification bodies, which are third-party organizations that ensure that all of the sourcing that has done and all of the changes that you make into materials are compliant with our standards and requirements. And if you are purchasing or using Fsc certified materials, you can apply for a promotional license. So promotional license enables companies and organizations at the end of the supply chain to use the Fsc trademarks, and you're not required to get certified. I just included here some of the eligibility criteria. So if you're using Fsc certified materials in your everyday operations, you're selling Fsc certified products, or you want to make different social responsibility claims or procurement claims, you can apply for a promotional license. How does this work? Well, firstly, you will have to apply for a license. Fsc International works with a range of offices around the world. We have around 45 national and regional offices. So you can contact one of them and they will ask you to fill in an application form. You can find the contact details for our national and regional offices on our website, or you can always contact me and I can pass you that information. So once you have filled in the application form, you'll also be required to submit documentation for our offices to check that the products that you are purchasing are indeed Fsc certified and they come from certified suppliers. Once all of this is done, then you can sign an international or promotional license agreement. What this means is that you have to pay a small service fee in order to benefit from full services. And Fsc in turn will provide you with a unique license code that you can use on all your materials, but also they will provide you with access to the Fsc trademarks. And once that is done, you are ready to promote. So the value of promotional licenses is that you are informing your consumers about your commitment to responsible forest management and what is your contribution to conservation of forests. And the way you're doing that, you're ensuring that you contributed to responsible sourcing in your supply chains by promoting your Fsc certified products. We have a lot of information on our website on how you can become a promotional license holder, but also happy to answer any questions at the end that you might have. And just to kind of inspire you a bit, I just want to show you how our current promotional license holder are using the Fsc trademarks. So there are different ways in which you can use them, for example, on printed or digital materials, on your websites. You can use it on your social media. You can use it in stores or point of sales promotions for different items that you have in your gift shops. You can use them in procurement claims, CSR reports, sustainability reports, and also in videos and other promotional materials. And here, there's a video that I'll be able to share with you later that we have produced with IKEA and WWF as an example. Thank you. I think that's the end of my presentation. Here are my contact details, and always feel free to get in touch with me if you have any other questions after this. Okay, I'll stop sharing my screen now.
Thank you so much, Paula. That was a fabulous overview of Fsc. It really, I love the fact that you started with some of the values and principles that embody what Fsc is about, but also just the recognition that you've been able to gain with the brand and logo, which is pretty remarkable. And even earlier when we saw the quick survey, such a high recognition across WAZA members, I guess just reinforces that. So that creates some real synergies and opportunities. But also thank you for making it very practical about some of the process, about how people can apply. And I'm sure there might be some more questions as we open up for discussion later on in the webinar. So thank you. So let's now move to two of our case studies. The first is Karen Farfield, and I'm sure Karen doesn't need a lot of introduction, hopefully, with a number of people who are watching. Karen is the head of the Wellington Zoo, who really led in so many ways a whole range of sustainability initiatives, and particularly in this area, they've got some fabulous real life examples across all of their operations. So I will hand over to Karen.
Thank you, EB. I will try and share my screen. Where is it? That's bizarre. It's not coming up. Again, this worked last night, but it's not working now.
Paula, did you have a backup to show maybe from your end?
I do.
Because we always...
It's just not coming up at all.
So good.
It's bizarre.
Yeah.
No, it's not coming up, Paula, for some reason.
There I have it. Let me share my screen.
Excellent. That's there. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you. I wanted to start with talking about our, what we call in New Zealand, our kaupapa, which is me tiaki kia ora. And really what that means in Te Reo Māori is that it's, we must look after the planet so that all life can thrive. So this ethos, or this kaupapa, is really what we use to guide the decision making for the zoo around all parts of our organisation. So it's really a part of our sustainability journey, but it's also part of our conservation work as well. Next slide, please, Paula. So this is just a snapshot of our strategy. And really, I like strategies that are one page so that you can actually, people can understand what they're looking at. So me tiaki kia ora actually forms the basis of our strategy. And we want to be the zoo with the biggest heart. And having the zoo with the biggest heart means that we must love the planet. We must love what we're trying to protect. So two areas within our strategy where our sustainability work sits mostly is in the whānau area, or our role, where we look at our sustainable development goals. And obviously life on land is a very important part of what we do in terms of the SDGs. The other area is in Wairua, which is our community. And this is really where we work with the community to have engaging, message-driven experiences for community action for the environment. So those two areas of our strategy really hone in on our sustainability work. Next, please, Paula. And underneath all of this are our organisational values. So you'll notice that there's a lot of Indigenous concepts in this. New Zealand is a dual language, or it's actually a tri-language country, but our Indigenous programs and our Indigenous concepts are very, very important to the way we work in New Zealand. The value that underpins our sustainability work is we have a strong green furry heart. And that's where we sit with all of this sort of information and the way our people actually do business. Next one. So starting off with our FSC journey, we did some work a few years back thinking about, well, what were going to be the three main projects that we worked on from a local, national and international perspective. And what they were going to be the highlights of our conservation work. Our local one was working with our Department of Conservation on a small Wellington green gecko. And FSC was our national project. So we wanted to make sure that we could actually walk the talk in terms of using FSC wood and paper. So one of the first things we did, that we actually got our country manager for FSC to come to the zoo and run a workshop for our staff. And as Paula said, you can contact FSC. They're very, very helpful. So CDL went through this process with us, talking about how we could use the brand, how it made a difference in their life when they were procuring things, or what happened in our organisation that was going to support our desire to work with FSC. So that was a really important starting point for our staff to be on board. Next slide. And then what we did after that is we looked holistically across the organisation, and obviously we started with infrastructure. And infrastructure, we all build, we all know that we use a lot of wood. So one of the things we really wanted to do was have all of our products have FSC certified timber. And we've written that into our construction specifications. We have had some interesting incidences in the past where contractors have not put up FSC timber. And I know someone's on this webinar who had to tell me once, Karen, that wood's going to have to come off because it's not FSC. So we had to take a hit financially on that one. But actually, I saw it as an investment into the future, not a cost to that project. So thank you, Shane, for that little bit of information. And this is our latest chimpanzee refurbishment that we did on our chimpanzee park. And what we decided to do was actually use the timber, but use the FSC message so that our visitors could become chimpanzee champions. Next slide, please. This goes through all of our work. This is a wooden pathway that we have in the zoo. So anything where there's wood, we make sure that it's FSC. Next slide. And then in our retail shops, we have quite high bar standards and I guess targets for sustainability products in our shop. So everything to do with paper, as Paula said, children's puzzles, coloured pencils, anything like that is all FSC branded product. Next slide. Even the things we've produced for ourselves with our conservation colouring book, all of these are printed on FSC. We don't stock any books in our shop that are not printed on FSC paper. Next slide. And then talking to our visitors, I think this is a really important thing. If we're going to walk the talk, we have to think about how we can get people to come with us on that journey and to make them feel good about doing good. So some of our graphics and things around the zoo are very simple. They're tools for people to use in their life. So for example, this one with tiger, you can have this sort of wood, which will be tiger unfriendly wood, or if you use this wood, it'll be tiger friendly wood. People take photos of this, they take it away, and when they go shopping, they can say, oh yeah, I won't buy that wood because it's not tiger friendly wood. So, and obviously you'll see the FSC logo on that graphic. Next one. This is another example of helping people to feel good about doing the right thing by using things such as FSC. So this is about choosing sun bear friendly wood. So if you choose FSC timber now, you're going to create more forests in the future for sun bear. So a small action that you do today could have a huge impact for a forest dwelling animal into the future. And most of the animals we care for at Wellington Zoo are forest dwelling animals. So it makes total sense for us to have this as one of our conservation messages. Next slide. This was something we introduced in the last year or so, and we know that if people make public pledges to change behaviour, there's a stickability factor. So they're more likely to follow through with that action if they've publicly said they're going to do something. So this is a selfie wall where people can stand in front of it and they can take a selfie of themselves, pledging to use FSC paper and wood, put that up on Instagram. They're telling everybody this is what they're going to do. So we're hoping that this will actually make sure that people do more work with FSC. And interestingly, in New Zealand, we know that it has high brand recognition as well, as you indicated in your survey earlier. Next slide. All our animal talks that our visitor rangers and our animal keepers actually do throughout the zoo, or our animal encounters, all have FSC as the major conservation message. So we decided to take the, and this varies across zoos, but we decided that this was going to be our constant message around the zoo for these animal talks. So people hear this message whether they're at tigers or at chimps or wherever they are. And so people will, our staff will hold up the logo so that people can actually recognise it. Next slide. We use it in all of our school holiday activities, and if we're using any paper products, we make sure that it's FSC as well. Next one. One of the things we wanted to do was really to test whether or not this conservation message around FSC was actually being understood by our visitors. So we had some surveys taken out in the zoo, and we just asked people some simple questions. Did they recognise the logo? Did they know what it meant? And would they be prepared to buy FSC products in their daily lives? So that gave us a test of whether or not the work we were doing around our messaging was actually working, which we found it was. And as I said, high brand recognition for FSC. Next slide. And so for us, this is really about one of the ways that together with our staff and with our community, we can actually work towards preserving wild animals and wild places together so that we end up with a kaupapa for the world, which is Metiaki Kia Ora. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. And that last slide is just so gorgeous. I cannot imagine anyone looking at that and not just smiling. It is just really wonderful. But I love the start of that, a zoo with a strong green furry heart. That is just such a lovely, lovely statement. So thank you for that presentation. It really showed a whole of zoo approach. So bringing in retail, but your messaging is so clear. But also the fact that you were open and honest, that you described it, it's not a financial hit, it's an investment. And Shane did add a little comment in the chat that he's not really sorry that you had to change your approach. So, and that's part of, I think, the messaging that we all have to take when we talk to our owners, boards, directors, whoever, that do we describe this as a cost or do we describe this as an investment? So, but the stickability factor was the other thing that I loved with that. The selfie wall looks gorgeous, and that consumer messaging and testing, I think there's something we can all learn from that. So thank you so much for sharing some of the amazing work that Wellington is doing. And so our last speaker, and I'm really pleased to have Alison Clements from Zoo Zürich, who is the project manager for zoo development, and so really talking from a facilities perspective as well as the broader zoo perspective. Again, really practical and willing to share Zoo Zürich's journey learnings before we open for questions. So over to you, Alison.
Okay, thank you. Now let's see. There we go. Let's see if this works again. It does not work. Okay. Can you see the presentation? Good, thank you. Okay. Thank you for letting me take part in this webinar. I feel grateful to be able to share a part of what we have been doing, part of what we have achieved and what we are planning on doing in future. My name, as I've been introduced, is Alison Clements. I work as a project and facility manager at the Zürich Zoo since about 12 years. And my main tasks, everyday work, are to acquire and evaluate data on all kinds of sustainability topics that may be the energy consumption, carbon emissions, and at the moment we are trying to implement the SDGs, which is quite a lot of work. Today I will follow up on those four bullet points that we published in the WAZA brochure, and I'm trying to give a very, very basic overview of what our everyday tasks are. Okay. Not working, huh?
I think you are on your last slide. So if you just go backwards.
Ha, thank you. Digital native, huh? Okay, good. Let's start with the heating. The Zürich Zoo heats most of its, or gets most of its heat demanded from essential wood chip heating. We cover about 75% of the demand of heat through wood chip. I especially contacted our wood chip supplier yesterday to confirm that all the wood we get is from the canton of Zürich and it's Fsc certified wood. So there's a good conscience there. In 2010, we got a heat pump to heat the Masoala rainforest. That covers about 24% of our heat demand at the moment. And in 2013, 2015, we improved and replaced the wood and oil heating. So now we actually reduced the amount of oil we need for heating to below 1%. So we save approximately 850,000 liters of mineral oils for heating every year. So that's a great thing we're very proud of. Our future goals are, of course, in construction to keep a focus on sustainability topics and to be ahead, if possible, ahead of technology, to just try to have efficient and good building and materials. Print media, corporate printing is a very important issue. We always print in Switzerland. We always print on Fsc paper. We always use Fsc certified stores. I just saw that Roger Graf is also participating today, so he's listening to me. About 5 years ago, I was told he introduced the label for Der Blaue Engel, the Blue Angel. Don't know if it's an international label. So having the Blue Angel on our printing paper was a management decision that took quite a lot of time and hard work, I think. And it guarantees that products and services meet a very, very high standard on topics like environment, health, and performance throughout the life cycle of paper. So from production through to waste, they check up on all the steps. Our biggest print run at the moment is the Zoo map. We have about 250,000 copies every year, followed by the Zoo News, which probably has more paper but less, a smaller print run. Our goal is to reduce the amount of print media, but it's very, very difficult for us to do that. We found that even if we promote the Zoo app and lots of visitors install the Zoo app, or they still want to have the map with them. Maybe because children don't use smartphones. My children like to run around with a map in their hands. I think that's probably a thing everybody knows who works at the zoo. So trying to reduce the amount of print media is still a major issue. When we talk about print media and use of paper, we can't leave out the waste disposal. It's a very important concern of ours that all materials are collected and recycled properly. So besides waste paper and cardboard, we also collect wood, metals, electric devices, batteries, glass, PET, green waste, manure, oils, chemicals, sort them and have them professionally recycled. Here again, it's a big aim of ours to reduce the volume of waste. The newest test we had is a prototype you see in the picture in our Lewa Savannah. Here we try to encourage our visitors to adopt a better waste separation behavior. They can separate even their biodegradable waste. And again, there we have great difficulties getting the message through to the visitors that, for example, our cups, they look like plastic cups, but they're not plastic, they're actually biodegradable. But people just don't understand that yet, and they haven't found out how to get the message through to the visitors. So that's still a major goal for the next year, I think. Every once in a while, wood is a building material. The most recent examples you can see in the picture on my slide. The Liva Savannah has one house that was mainly constructed out of wood, and also the roof of the elephant park was built out of wood, major part of it. We have FSC wood for building. The Savannah building was built from native larch, as far as I'm informed. And also at the shops, we have a very good constructor who aims to build in an ecological and regional way. So he gets materials and recycles them when he builds new designs. And in our shop, he used old wood planks made from chestnut tree, and designed a new front for our shop. And I think that's a very good way, in a vintage shabby chic design, to show the customer how pretty that can look in the end. We try to follow the guidelines of this Canton of Zürich for ecological building. And I must say we're in a very lucky situation to be a private zoo. So we have the free choice of what companies we want to work with when constructing. We don't have to go with a official company. So developers and builders are chosen, and we look out that they show a big consciousness of ecological matters. So here again, the goal is to the protection of rainforest and the education of visitors, and also through constructing work to communicate these topics. In about 20 different exhibits, we pick up on nature conservation projects and various sustainability topics. We have about 1.2 million annual visitors, and they look at about around 400 informational panels. We try to get the message over about animals, their habitats, and how to protect their environment. We give guided tours on all these topics to over 40,000 adult groups and a year, and over 400 school classes. At the moment, the department for these, the educational department, is updating the exhibit in the Great Ape house. It's a bit, the data's slightly outdated. They're trying to update that. And in future, we will focus on slightly more radical messages for our visitors. We want to have very short and easy to understand take-home messages that customers and visitors can implement in their own homes. So that might stir up some emotions. I don't know, we're very careful, but we want to be a bit clearer about all those topics and issues. Okay, the end. I thank you for listening. Thank you for the chance to share. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer those later on, or anytime if you want to take up contact or contact me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alison. That was really, really wonderful to see. It was a real mix of the practical, how Zürich is leading from the front, and with a range of different examples that I'm sure will spark some questions. And we always know that this webinar is only going to give us a short time to explore that, but hopefully it creates those connections where people might get in touch with you, or we can create those linkages. But we have had a few questions that have come through already. So to start with, there's a question which I think is for both Karen and Alison about how do you gain that commitment from either board, management, government, depending on the ownership of your zoo or aquarium, because obviously WAZA has different memberships. How do you gain that commitment for what's seen as an investment or maybe seen as a cost? What are the steps you would encourage others to think about?
Do you want me to start, Evie?
I'm very happy for you to start, Karen.
Okay.
Because I know
Sorry,
I'm sure
Alison.
you've had many of those discussions with your...
I think it's a really interesting question, because I know when we had to remove that timber, it was $20,000, and I had to go, we're a city-owned zoo, so I had to go to the mayor of the city and say, look, this project, you know, when I meet with her, this is going to take a hit. And she sort of just looked at me and she took a deep breath and she said, Karen, I totally understand what you're saying. We'll accept that. So I think where we've been very fortunate is in New Zealand, sustainability is a very important way of life, really. And so in a city that is very biodiverse and has a lot of really amazing natural landscapes, we have an advantage. And my board has always been very, very supportive of investing in sustainability. And so as the chief executive, it was probably easier for me to say, well, this is the way we need to do it, and this is what it's going to be, and this is going to be the specifications that we have. It's a bit like our animal welfare specifications for our catering. So this just becomes part of the way partners do business with us. So once you what I would suggest is set out what you want to do. So is this the way you want to go? What does that framework look like? What do the principles look like? And when you're engaging with partners or in construction projects or whatever, say this is the way we operate. And we have had examples, as I said, where people have tried to give us something that wasn't FSC, and we've had to say, no, we specified FSC. Sometimes they don't get it, but oh, you can use this certification. And we're like, no, we want to use this one. So it is about being very clear about what your principle's going to be and how you want to do business in your zoo or aquarium. And people start to understand, that's how you do business. So, yeah, I think we've been fortunate in some ways being in New Zealand, but I do think it's about setting that strategy. And that's why I started with the strategy, because all of those decisions fall out of a good strategic framework. Yeah.
Thank you, Karen. And Alison from Zoo Zürich, any comments you would add to that?
It's very difficult for me to really say, because I'm not part of the management or the head of the zoo, of course. I don't know how they actually decide on things, but it's certainly part of the strategic outlook of the zoo. So it's a thing they decided on many years ago, and they just stick to. We have guidelines on how building has to be and what materials we're going to use. And in Switzerland, that's very expensive. So we are very, very lucky that we have lots of donations many people are prepared to pay for good quality building and good quality products at the moment. And we hope that it's going to stay that way.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. If you're clear about the benefits, if there's a small additional cost and you can sell the benefits, are people willing to pay for that? And that perhaps leads to Paula from FSC. There's been a question about certification and is there any other certifications that may be able to be used?
So for forest-based materials, there are other certifications similar to FSC. I'm not going to name them because I believe that FSC is one of the best certification for forest and wood, but we also work with other organizations, for example, WWF, and we are working together and we endorse them and they endorse us. So we work together with other organizations. But yes, there are some other forest-based material certifications out there, but I still believe we are one of the most trusted and most recognized across the globe.
And Paula, with the MOU that's in place between WAZA and FSC, one of the elements was increasing forest growth. And I'd be really interested to get an update from FSC on that and how that could be reported and fed back to WAZA members.
Sure. I don't know the exact numbers as of today, have we reached our 50% goal or not, but we are working every day to certify as much forest as possible. This is available to everyone on our public website. We have a section called Facts and Figures where you can check at any time how many hectares of certified forest there are currently in the world. And we also have an interactive map where you can look in your country, where are the certified forests, who they're certified with, who is the forest owner. And also there you can see the certified companies that we have around the world, where are they based, but also the promotion license holders. So we have a GIS map that you can kind of go and play. So I'll drop a message here so everyone can have a look. And then maybe I'll speak to my colleagues to see from 2018 when this has been signed, what is the progress that we have made and how much more we have to go by 2023.
Well, thank you so much. That's really, really useful. And I'm going to ask one last question because then I'm going to try and wrap up because I'm conscious of time. For Alison and Karen, if you had to give advice to WAZA members on areas to focus on first, what would it be?
For FSC specifically?
Yeah.
I think I just...
Sustainable paper and timber usage.
Yeah,
within our
it's a bit operations. Like I just go back to strategy. I think unless you are clear about what you're trying to achieve, you could be doing a lot of things that are not focused. And so it really is giving your organisation the focus that this is a really important principle that's going to guide your decision making. So that comes out of strategy. And really that's about, and that goes back to the question that was asked before, boards love strategy. So if you can get a strategy that actually enables them to understand where you're going with this, then I think that all the rest of it falls out of it. And that goes for all sustainability actions, really. Yeah.
And do you think, I'm just looking, sorry, I'm trying to, I'm not a digital native at all. I'm trying to catch you, listen and watch the chat. There was a question about, do you think that's brought extra benefits for attracting partnerships or new relationships with the zoo?
We actually, FSC in New Zealand ran a business forum a few years back in Auckland, and they asked us to go up and present about what we were doing with FSC. And that was a really interesting forum because we ended up doing, it's not an ongoing partnership, but it was a partnership for that year with Bunnings Warehouse, which is a hardware store. And they stock a lot of FSC product in Australia and New Zealand. And they were very supportive of working with us. And so they actually had zoo labels on their products that were FSC. So they were connecting the zoo with FSC product. And so it was really nice having that joint, I guess, partnership around promoting FSC and saying they were working with us to protect forests and forest animals. Yeah.
Great example. Alison, anything you would add from Zürich?
So the first question about what was that, the strategy that Karen said. I think everything has to start with a strategy, because we noticed that at our zoo, when we have an exhibit to a theme like palm oil or wood, visitors read that and then go to the shops and see something is wrong. They find the wrong product, they go to the restaurant and find shrimp or something like that. And then we have a problem. So you have to start with a strategy and then go through bit by bit. And if something is worth being done, it's worth being done, not perfectly. So just do it bit by bit.
Yep. That's such fabulous advice. I'm conscious of the time. That's such fabulous advice to finish with, because that's really what all of this is about. The sustainability strategy was launched to try and encourage all WAZA members to look at their own operations and take the next step. And every one of us starts at a different point in every one of those areas. And we've got an amazing group of WAZA members, some of whom are quite well advanced, some of who are starting, but they are all willing to share stories and examples. And that's the benefit of a WAZA membership. And I'm so proud to see the amazing case studies that have been presented. And I'd really like to thank our presenters tonight. Paula from FSC, thank you so much for making FSC accessible and available, creating those links so that at a regional level, we all know how we can look at different elements and try and take that next step. I'd really love anyone to send us notes on what else would be useful. I encourage you to look at the guide, look at the case studies. If there's stuff that you want more information about, please send it through, because that's what the WAZA office I know will really enjoy delivering. And to Karen and Alison, thank you so much for sharing your experience from a real life on the ground, but this is all intended to share knowledge. And I loved one of the quotes that I heard earlier, which just really sung true, apart from the green furry zoo, which I do like. We work for a world where forests are thriving. And that's such a lovely quote that I'd like to finish on and say, how can we all help do that? And if we all just take one little step, we can make that happen. So thank you so much. Please feed information back. If there's anything that the WAZA office can do, I know that Martine and Paula, they're so amazing. They will keep adding to the guide and providing more information. So thank you for our panel. It's been fabulous. And thank you for everyone who's listening. Good night, good morning, good afternoon. Thanks so much to the panelists. If others have finished, that was